Erev Tov and Hag Hanukkah Sameach on this third day of Hanukkah. Good to have you all here this evening. It is Wednesday night. It is Wednesday night. It is 8 p.m. here on the east side of the United States, here in the diaspora. It is Tuesday night. I'm a day ahead of myself. Let's try this again. It is Tuesday night. It is 8 p.m. here on the east side of the United States, here in the diaspora. This is the Maimon Beit Knesset, and therefore it must be the Rabbis Discuss, whatever it is that we want to discuss. So let me bring in Rabbi Ancel, and I'll turn his volume back up for him. There,
Good
now
evening,
you're...
everyone. Hag Hanukkah Sameach. So we are going to do the second section of the question is, the gentleman that borrowed a bottle of wine, should he replace it? Should he replace the same one or the equivalent? Because it's different. Because if you're somebody saying that he is supposed to return the identical one, or to return the equivalent one, it's totally different. So let's discuss it.
Okay, so before we get into this too far, right now in the chat room we have Donald, and we have Marshall, and we have some watching in the background who haven't either said anything in the chat room or on their phones or tablets. We know you're there. So, okay. So let's get everybody caught up first by reading the question over again to refresh everybody's memory. So, Ancel, if you want to read the question again.
Okay. So, recently when I forgot to buy grape juice for Shabbos, I went to my neighbor and asked to borrow a bottle of grape juice. My neighbor replied that he didn't have any grape juice, but he could lend me a bottle of wine. I told him that I really don't like wine, but since there was no alternative, I would take the bottle of wine. We made up that I would return to him the same wine after Shabbos. When I went to the store to buy the identical bottle of wine, I was shocked to discover that the bottle I borrowed cost $200. I would have never borrowed such an expensive bottle of wine, especially since I really don't like the wine. On Friday night, I could have made kiddush over challah, and for the day, I could have found another solution. The question is, am I obligated to return such expensive wine?
Okay, so last week when we were discussing this, we kind of came to a couple of conclusions about what they had actually written. Number one, that it wasn't valid. It wasn't a valid decision, correct?
Yes.
And that's because the other person that was involved in this, the person who actually loaned the person the bottle of wine, was not present. Wasn't present and didn't have his opportunity to present his side of the story. Therefore, according to halakha, there's no decision. Can't be any decision because both parties weren't present. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. So.
Still stands today.
Yep. So we know that whatever the din comes up with is basically, it's just an opinion. It doesn't hold any validity because it violates the halakha for judges, for a beit din. So, with that in mind, we're going to come back on this because their decision, their opinion last week was that the person didn't have to replace the entire bottle of wine. He just had to pay for the benefit that he derived from it, and that's where we're going to pick up tonight. So, let us go on. So, in last week's article, we learned that you do not have to return the wine that costs $200. And again, I dispute that. We considered two possible reasons why you could have been responsible to return a $200 bottle of wine, and we ruled out both of these possibilities. The first reason you could have been responsible is because when one borrows, he automatically becomes responsible to return something identical to what he borrowed. If one borrows money, he must return the equivalent amount of money. If one borrows food, he must return the same type of food. However, in your case, since it was obvious that you did not intend to borrow $200 wine, you did not intend to obligate yourself to return such expensive wine.
Even though you derive benefit from it.
Pardon?
But you derive benefit from it.
That's right.
You drank it.
You still derive benefit from it. Okay, so here's getting the page up there where Rabbi Ancel can read it. Okay, so obligate yourself. Even though you did not commit yourself to return a similar bottle, that commitment was based on an incorrect assumption and is similar to a sale, which is classified as makach tuot, where the rule is that even though the customer obliged himself to pay for what he received, nevertheless, that obligation is invalid. Similarly, the obligation you accept upon yourself, namely to return the identical bottle, is invalid.
Correct.
Okay. So, the second possible reason that you could have been liable is because since you did not legally acquire this wine, effectively you damaged his wine by drinking it. We proved that when one mistakenly damages by normal usage another person's object that he thinks is his, he is not liable for the damages that result from his error. Having proven, and again, I'm disputing that, because I don't think they've proven it.
No.
Having proven that you do not have to return a $200 bottle, we left open the question of what you do have to return. In this article, we will discover that there are two independent sources to create liability for a lesser amount than the full $200. So, I think we're going to pick it up right there. Ancel, if you want to take it from there.
Okay, so
this one, I'm sorry, it's the next paragraph down.
Okay, I see. The first source is that you do not totally air. You expected to receive wine, and you did receive wine. Your error was only that you did not think that you would receive such an expensive bottle. Therefore, as such as you could have expected the wine to be worth, you are liable for it. This is similar in the Gemara that is ruled by the Shulchan Aruch that if a person sets fire to another person's haystack, he is not liable for objects that were hidden inside the haystack, which are not usually hidden there. The reason that is that one setting the haystack ablaze never accepted upon himself liability for those hidden objects. However, he is responsible to pay for a haystack filled with hay, since for that he did accept responsibility. We should note that the Shulchan Aruch rules like Tosafos, that his rule applies even if a person damaged directly, not by means of a fire. A case which is very similar to yours is ruled by Mordechai. A person lost a sword he had borrowed from another person. So now we're getting into three people.
Yeah.
After it became lost, the borrower discovered he had borrowed an unusually expensive sword. The Mordechai proves from the Gemara, which he just cited, that the borrower only has to pay the value of a typical sword. Only. The Ketos only disagrees and maintains that the borrower must pay the full value of the sword in case the borrower used the sword after he realized that it was expensive. But in a case like yours, where he did not realize that the wine was expensive, the Ketos would agree that you are only liable for what the wine typically costs. Thus, we see again that even though the borrower is not liable for the full value of the sword, nonetheless he is liable for what he expected the sword to be worth. Couple of questions.
Yeah.
So now you have three people involved. You have, I borrow a sword from you, and I give it to somebody else. And I lend it to somebody else.
Okay, that's a question. You can't loan something that you borrowed.
But you can't loan to something that doesn't belong to you.
You can or can't?
Cannot.
That's what I thought. You can't.
I have a sword. I loan it to you. You basically cannot loan it to somebody else because you're not the owner.
Right. Right, and there's actually another case. Maybe we should do that one next week. It's a case where a man who's he fixes tefillin, and person brings a tefillin in for him to fix, and the just basically doesn't come back for it. So this guy has been holding on to this thing for months and months, I guess over a year, and he hasn't been paid for it. Oh, wait a minute. Yes, he was paid for the work, but the man never came back to pick it up. And the question was, could he actually loan it? So, and they went into a lot of different things because of, what it actually was, because it was tefillin, Can you loan somebody tefillin and stuff like that, which has a completely different connotation than, in this case, the sword.
But how do you establish ownership?
How do you
establish that ownership? The guy brought in a set of tefillin. He paid for the repairs. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
He never comes back. If he doesn't come back for a long time, does this mean, or does this pass the ownership to the person who fixed it?
Actually, no, it doesn't.
It does not.
Yeah. But the question,
Yeah.
well, we're getting ahead of ourselves. I think we're going to hit that one next week because it's a very interesting case because there's a very different set of rules when you have something that's used for a holy act.
Yeah, that is correct. But the thing is,
Okay, so
if you
Donald.
borrow something, okay, we'll continue that next week.
Okay, Donald
There's a
has
lot of
Donald
questions on
has a
that.
question in here. He says, "Judge can't hear one side without the other side being present." That's absolutely correct. Judge
Correct.
cannot hear one side of an argument, and they're very clear. It's actually in the Torah
Correct.
that a
It's
judge
even a
cannot
civil
hear
law.
one side of the
Civil law is
case.
the same.
Pardon?
Civil law is the same.
Yes.
If you go to court or you go to, what do you call it, to small claims court, both of the people have to be there.
Well, not necessarily. If the other person doesn't show up, the judge can hear in a civil court. If the other person doesn't show up, then the other person can present his case. But the other person has to be able to prove that this person had been served, with a notice to come to court, and that he hadn't filed for an extension or anything like that. But
It can get so
in the civil
complicated.
court, they can actually hear one side of the case. But according to Jewish law, absolutely not. It doesn't matter whether it's a civil case or a criminal case. They can't hear one side without the other one being present.
Here's another thing. Can a ketubah be signed by one witness and a rabbi?
Can it be signed by one witness and a rabbi?
Right.
Well, you have to have 3 signatures, don't you?
Correct. You must have 2 witnesses.
Yeah. Now
So
you can
it
have
makes-
3
makes-
rabbis,
Yeah.
or you can have 2
you can have
rabbis and another Jew, or 2
Yes.
Jews and a rabbi.
Correct.
Yeah.
But there has to be 3 signatures.
Right.
So there has to be 2 witnesses and the rabbi. Basically, the rabbi's signature only makes the ketubah valid, but the witnesses are the 2 most important people on the ketubah. Now, we can get into that another time, who the witnesses are, what the rules for witnesses are. So that's another topic. Anyways, let's continue with this.
Yeah, okay. So let's see.
In your case,
Okay, so I'll pick it up from here. In your case, you had permission to drink the wine that halakhically belonged to your neighbor, just that your neighbor expected payment in full and you expected to pay much less for the wine, i.e., you did not anticipate that the wine that you would need to pay for the difference in value. A similar case we discussed by the Terumat Hadashin, whose decision is ruled by the Ramah. In his situation, a son-in-law ate by his father-in-law, thinking at the time that he could eat for free. Eventually, his father-in-law demanded payment. Okay. Such a father-in-law, right? Invite you over for dinner and then charge you. Okay. The Terumat Hadashin ruled that the son-in-law must pay. There is a dispute between the Maharit from Evan Hoezer 21, who understands
Put it
that.
up.
Pardon?
Put it up so I can read. Can I see what you're reading?
I'm reading. You don't need to know.
Okay.
There is a dispute between the Maharat, who understands that the reason the son-in-law must pay is because he damaged his father-in-law's food by consuming it, And Ketzot,
The Quetzals.
Ketzot, who argues, yeah, this is all Ashkenazic transliteration.
Okay.
Anyway, he argues that since the father-in-law gave the son-in-law permission to eat the food, the action of the son-in-law cannot be classified as an act of damage.
Correct.
Rather, the Ketzot maintains that the reason the son-in-law must pay is because he benefited from his father-in-law's food at his father-in-law's expense. This dispute would pertain in your case as well. Let me just scroll that up for you. According to the Maharit, you are liable because you damage your neighbor's wine. As we saw before, as much as you thought you owed for damaging, you must pay. Here, where you did not intend to damage your neighbor, even those who disagree with Tosafot, in general, would agree that you do not have to pay more than the amount that you thought the wine was worth, as we saw in the previous article. Okay, therefore, the amount you anticipated the wine could cost you must pay. Similarly, if one understands the Teramat Halishen like the Ketzot, you must pay the amount you anticipate the wine could be worth, since you committed yourself to pay that amount. Which shows that the wine was worth that much for you, and effectively you benefited that amount from the wine at the expense of your neighbor. Therefore, we have established that you are liable for the amount that you should have anticipated that perhaps the wine was worth.
Here's the problem.
Yeah.
Here's the problem. The guy didn't like wine. So
right. And that becomes a big issue, doesn't it?
Yes. Since he didn't like the wine, he doesn't like the wine, but he drank it because for the mitzvah to make kiddush on Saturday night, on Friday night, or Saturday, whatever. How are you going to decide or establish what the amount that you are liable to pay him back?
Right. Now, according to Tosafot, that he would only have to pay for what he would expect the wine to cost, which would be about a bottle of wine, what he would usually purchase. Because obviously he was purchasing wine for Shabbat all the time.
But the whole thing is, the guy makes kiddush over grape juice. He does not buy. So here's it's a dilemma in Jewish law, is that he can go into the store and says, well, I have no idea if it's a good wine, it's a cheap wine, it's a medium wine, and it's expensive wine. I'll just buy him a bottle, an $8 bottle, $10 wine.
Yeah. Give me a bottle of $3 Chuck. Huh?
Yeah. So how do you establish that? It's not easily done. And that creates a problem, and this is why you're going to have the discussion between Tosafos and the Maharit and the Quetzals, because each one will have an opinion, and at the end, there's no conclusion. It's just an opinion.
Yeah. So let's go into this a little bit. Okay, so he borrows a $200 bottle of wine. He doesn't know it's a $200 bottle of wine, but it's a $200 bottle of wine. Okay, so let's say that in that bottle of wine that there are, well, let's just make it easy. There's 10 servings in that bottle of wine. Okay, so that makes each serving worth $20. Okay?
Yep.
Now, because he was performing a mitzvah with it, and you're always supposed to, do your best for a mitzvah, right? So, anytime you have, when you do something on Shabbat, if you're challah, when you pick up the loads of challah, which one are you supposed to use first? You're supposed to use the superior one first.
But here's my. Go ahead.
So I'm thinking, okay, he doesn't like wine. Okay, he's still damaged the property. Okay, so if he doesn't have to replace the bottle of wine, which again I still don't agree with, but if that's the decision, that's the decision. We know it's not valid, but that's the decision they came up with. Then he has to replace it for the benefit that he derived from it. Okay, he damaged it. Let's say he did kiddush in the kiddush on Shabbat or on Erev Shabbat, and he did kiddush on Shabbat morning. So he had 2 portions of wine out of that bottle.
So he drank $40 worth of wine.
$40 worth of wine. Yeah. So it seems like, even if he does, if he says I don't like wine and I don't usually use grape juice, I mean, basically he would be getting off without having to pay anything, and he's damaged his neighbor significantly.
I still have a question. I think that they're both liable in a way.
That's true.
One, the owner who had the wine should have told him.
Yes.
The one who's borrowing, he should have known. He should have asked, and he should have known. Listen, this guy is well-to-do. He's not going to buy a cheap bottle of wine. But here's the other thing: is just because he is a wealthy man doesn't mean that he has good taste in wine. That bottle of wine.
That's true.
So, I mean, we can go on and ask different questions.
Oh yeah, but I mean, we were talking about this last week. If I go to my neighbor's house to borrow something, and I know my neighbor, and he has a Rolls Royce, and he has a very high-end apartment, and he's got marble floors and stuff from it. Am I going to walk in there and expect to borrow a bottle of $3 Chuck, or a bottle of Manischewitz, or something like that? I mean,
basically it comes down to he should have never borrowed it if he knew that he could make kiddush over the challah. He had no business borrowing it. But if he knew and he saw that the guy drives the Rolls Royce, it should have gone through his mind. This guy has good taste, but more importantly, he's got an expensive taste.
Yeah. I mean, if he's driving a big expensive car, and I mean, you should automatically make an assumption that he's not going to have a cheap bottle of wine sitting around. He's probably going to have something that's, fairly substantial. And, he should have, he should have been responsible to at least, ask the guy. And you have a point, too, that, if my neighbor came to me and said, look, I don't have any grape juice. I don't usually drink wine, but can I borrow some wine for, or can I? Well, actually, didn't he originally, he went to ask to borrow some grape juice, and the guy didn't have grape juice.
Yeah, he asked for grape juice. He didn't
ask for grape juice. He didn't have any grape juice, so the man offered him wine. So at that point, the guy who offered it should have said, "Hey, look,
oh, by the way,
I only have wine."
Pouring a $200 bottle of wine.
Yeah. Yeah, do you really want this or not? But
But I
again,
go, I
he was using it for a holy purpose, so he should have been aware that, well, maybe that, maybe that too. See, this is the issue with not having both parties present, because I mean, the the rabbis tell us that we're always supposed to use our best on Shabbat, right?
correct,
Okay,
but
so if the guy comes to him and says, I need some wine," then I would assume, well, the guy wants the best for Shabbat.
again we're going with us.
I can't give him some cheap bottle.
But we're going again with assumptions.
Again, yes, and that's why I was saying, this is the issue with not having both the parties present.
It's something, basically, this is a good question, and this is a good thing for the people who are listening, for everybody, that there are so many different things that can happen in a transaction that can cause. Well, here's the thing. When you're drinking a glass of wine for a mitzvah, how do you establish its worth? Because when you're doing a mitzvah, there's, you can't put value on it.
Yeah.
This guy is making kiddush. Was his kiddush or the glass of wine worth $20 because the bottle is worth 200? It's not cut and dry. There's like I have 100 questions, and we're still going to come up to the same opinion, not conclusion and not assumption.
Okay, so Marshall puts in the chat room, he says, if they are both liable, what can be decided that placates both parties? Well, that's not the judge's purview, is to placate both parties. It's to make the determination what is right. I'd say if he doesn't have to pay for the bottle of wine, he at least needs to pay what the bottle was worth for what the damage was, because he was using it for a holy purpose. So he should not be arguing about, I took 2 portions out of the bottle and the bottle is worth $200, so that's $40. So am I going to lowball it because of a mitzvah?
Okay, but here's the other question. So since I'm the one who gave you the bottle, okay, and you say, well, I only drank 2 glasses, here's the rest of the bottle, do I have to take it back?
At $200, I would.
Yeah, but not so. Well, sorry,
but then again, I like Manischewitz.
I don't know who touched it. There's you can get into another argument.
Yeah.
For me, if I was the judge, you probably would laugh at me. I would say to both of them, shake hands and forget about it.
Yeah. Oh.
Because you're not going to come up with the right answer. Because you cannot say making kiddush over the wine. You damage the wine, because doing a mitzvah is not damages. So we can go on and all night. We're not going to come up to the same answer.
Well, let's see what else they have to say here.
Okay.
So, okay, just checking on the time here. Okay, so in your case, where you told the lender that you do not like wine and do not buy wine for kiddush, you need not pay any more than this amount, which was the expected amount. Okay? However, so I guess whatever,
here's my question.
would say whatever. Well, in this case, typically the rabbis go with what's the average person do.
Okay, but here's my question. So I took the bottle of wine home. So Friday night I make kiddush. Saturday at once the services, you put another glass of wine and you say Alkein Berach, the blessing.
Mm-hmm.
So you use $40. So here's the thing. So you did $40 worth of damage. So you come to me and says, okay, I drank I drank 2 glasses of wine. Here's $40. Who owns the bottle of wine?
Oh, well, the person who loaned it to him would still own the bottle of wine because
But if I don't want to
at that point, he's considered a borrower.
Okay, so if I don't want to take it back, you're the owner, right?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, if he doesn't want to take it back, then it becomes, he has to declare it ownerless.
So there's your answer. So he has to declare. He has to say, I did $40 worth of damage. Here's the $40, and you can say, keep the bottle of wine. It was done for a good deed. Keep the bottle of wine.
Yeah.
That I can see.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a mitzvah for me, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so let's catch up in the chat room. Let's see. So Marshall says, does both parties have to be Jewish? No, actually they don't. They don't have to both be. Okay, so Marilyn says, best wine in the world is Ben Ami, an Israeli Merlot. Less than $20 a bottle. Oh, Donald says, thank you. Average is what I would expect to pay. Okay, so again, if he has to pay the bottle, what is customary? So what is the average person? What does an average person pay for a bottle of wine that he is going to use for Kiddush? Okay, because we
Like
see
you said,
there's a lot of
Israeli wine, kosher wine is $20. So here's $20.
Yeah.
It's a hard answer.
It really is. That's why I like reading these things, because they're not so clear cut. I find a lot of times when I'm reading these, I'm going, yeah, but what about this? What about what it says over here? You know. Okay, so in your case, you told the lender that you do not like wine and you do not buy wine for Kiddush and you need not pay more than this amount. However, another person who does enjoy wine would have to pay more because there is a second reason a person has to pay when he eats another person's food. Okay. You want to pick it up from here? I think
Where are you?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Okay. So the reason that one must pay for the benefit he derives from another person's possession, if the owner suffers even a small loss, even if the one who benefits would not have been liable for damages. This is called by the Gemara and many places that it's for zenehene vezet shosir. That means that even if the damage is small, you still benefited from it. So they say you must pay for having the benefit. There are several situations that are discussed by the Gemara and Poskim where a person ate someone's food and was not liable for damages, but nevertheless was required to pay the value of the benefit he derived from the food he ate. So accordingly to the previous kesos, the case of the Terumas Hadashen is one example of this phenomenon. A situation that is discussed in the Gemara is where orphans found a cow among their deceased father's possessions, and thinking that it was theirs, they slaughtered and ate the meat. Tosafos explains that they are not liable for damages the cow because they were the ones they had no reason to suspect that the animals was not theirs. Nevertheless, the Gemara rules that they must pay a cheap price for the value of the meat that is ruled by the Shulchan Aruch. The reason they must pay for the price is because they benefited from the meat at the expense of the true owner of the cow. However, they were not required to pay the full price because they normally did not buy such expensive meat. The Gemara does not specify what is the meaning of cheap price. See, there's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
How do you establish what the value is? However, there's another Gemara that discusses another example of this phenomenon, and their an amount is specified. The Gemara discusses a groom who bought gifts of food to his fiance's family, and then his fiancee broke up the engagement. The Gemara rules that the fiance's family must pay for the food they consume, even though when they ate the food they did not anticipate that they would have to pay. Nevertheless, since in truth they benefited at the groom's expense, and since he would have never given the presents if he would have anticipated that the engagement would be broken by the fiancé, they must pay. Again, but here's the whole story. Again, we are going to go say with assumptions. Again, the assumption was that they would not have eaten such expensive food, and they would have anticipated that they would eventually have to pay for it. The Gemara again writes that they must pay a cheap price for the food. So we are going to go on all night and argue what is a cheap price.
Yeah.
So he bought some expensive kosher
Well,
steak.
the Gemara actually says what it is.
Okay.
In this case.
So the Gemara specified that a cheap price means 2/3 of the full value.
2/3 of the full value.
So the Gemara rules on the side of the owner of the cow.
Yes.
Question. So if the Gemara rules on the side of the owner of the cow, but we just said now that they would not have eaten the meat if they knew that it was that expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You can go the other way and say, well, if it was a nice cow, you shouldn't have slaughtered it. But then they assume, so here this is going to go back and forth, but they assume that the cow belonged to them.
Uh-huh.
So, whose opinion are you going to take? Is 2/3 of the full value? Is it valid?
Well, let's see. 2/3 of the $200 bottle of wine. 2/3 would be $133. Still
The guy wouldn't know the difference between drinking a $8 bottle of wine and a $133 bottle of wine or $200 bottle of wine, since he hates wine. So, so we can go in and go on and argue what the thing is, and we're going to come up with our opinions, just like Tosafos or the Shulchan Aruch or whoever is involved in this, and we're still not going to come up to 100% answer.
Okay, so
then we're like the Rambam.
Well, we're at our halfway point, so let's go ahead and we'll take our break now, and then when we return, we can go into this even more. So I'm going to turn your volume down, Ancel.
Okay.
And I feel so powerful. And we're going to take our break, and we will be back in 6.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy, the chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
It's intermission time, folks, so hurry, hurry, hurry. Step right over to our refreshment center for the most extravagant array of refreshment goodies ever assembled under one roof. Enjoy breathtaking, mouth-watering goodies, everything from a snack to a delicious full meal. At our refreshment center, you'll find a large variety of goodies to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, or your sweet tooth. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Visit our refreshment center now. The show starts in 5 minutes. The show starts in 4 minutes. The show starts in 3 minutes. The show starts in 2 minutes. The show starts in 1 minute. And now, on with the show.
And we are back, and we've been continuing our discussion during the break. Let's catch up with what's going on in the chat room. Okay, so let's see. Okay, Marshall says, what did the judge decide? We haven't got there yet. We're getting there. Let's see. Okay. Simchai has joined us along with Ronald and Yehuda. And let's see.
Ask Marshall what if he was the judge, what he would decide. What would he decide?
Okay. Marshall, what would you have decided? Okay, so let's see. The wine drinker owes $133.33. Okay, now that brings up a good point, Donald. I was just thinking about this during the break. Okay, so he has to pay for the benefit he derived, right?
Yep.
And okay, so if the wine costs $200, and according to the Gemara, that he only has to pay the cheap price, which is 2/3 of the value.
But that's not cheap.
Okay,
Why
but
is it cheap?
no, wait a minute, hang on. Okay, that would be for the full bottle. The $133 would be for the whole bottle, but he only drank 2 portions out of there.
Yep.
Okay, so that makes it what $26.66.
Okay.
And or let's say just $27. Okay, $27 is what he damaged the wine.
I'll rule on that.
Okay, and then he would, and then the owner would get the bottle back for what's in the rest of it. So let's find out what the rabbis had to say, what the decision is. Okay, so okay. Many Rishonim, the Rambam and the Ritvo, and Kitzubot 34b write that this is not an ironclad price, but each case must be judged individually, when the underlying price being that the one who benefited must pay for the amount of benefit he derived. This is the explanation of the Sema, of what the Shulchan Aruch means when it rules that the orphans must pay 2/3 of the full price for the meat they consumed. The Sema says, Chazal reckoned that even one who normally does not eat meat because of its cost would eat meat if it was available, if he was able to acquire it at 2/3 the usual price. Okay, I'll buy that. Okay, thus, we have a rule that we can apply to one who enjoys good wine and borrows wine that costs much more than he anticipated, but must estimate how much he would have been willing to pay for such good wine. Even if, for example, he never bought wine that cost more than $75, we have to consider what price he would have to be willing to pay for wine that retailed for $200. This does not apply to you since you don't enjoy wine and would not have paid anything extra, but it applies to one who does enjoy wine. But he did enjoy the mitzvah. In conclusion, okay, Marshall, let's see what Marshall says. Marshall says both parties shake hands and go golfing.
Thank you, Marshall. You agree with me.
Okay, so in conclusion, you don't enjoy good wine. Have to pay what you reasonably could expect the wine you borrowed to be worth. Another person who does enjoy wine in your situation would have to pay the amount we estimated, but he would have to be willing to pay for such good but expensive wine. Okay, so there you have it. It's a decision that's not a decision. Oh,
I can put another twist into it.
go ahead.
Okay, so what if just I don't drink alcohol, but I use not in my case. I'm just saying a person does not drink alcohol, but uses grape juice to make kiddush.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah. Such as this case.
such as this case. But because it is a mitzvah, he drank, let's say, 2 glasses because he has got to do it Friday night and Shabbos.
Mm-hmm.
Does he have to pay?
Yes. Yes. That's what I keep coming around to is yes, he has to pay because he derived not only the benefit of drinking the wine, even though he didn't enjoy it, he did enjoy the mitzvah. He enjoyed the performance of the mitzvah, therefore, he's liable for the cost of the wine.
Correct.
Maybe not the full cost of the wine, like we were saying. I kind of like the Gemara's description of 2/3. 2/3 the value.
So most people would not relate to a mitzvah to drinking wine. So by the person doing the mitzvah for Friday night and Saturday, he did derive pleasure out of that because he knew he's doing a mitzvah.
Right.
So most definitely, it's hard to say what a cheap price is, but if they mean 2/3, I'll go along. To me, to settle such a thing, because like I said, it can go on forever,
Right.
I would say like what Marshall said, shake hands and be friends.
Yeah.
But in true fact, he should pay because he derived the benefit by doing a mitzvah.
Right.
And most people, it's hard to understand and hard to say, how do you put a value on a mitzvah? There is no value on a mitzvah. But
we do know that certain things. Okay, so it's like, okay, so I go to the store and I go to the bakery, which I love to do. Go to the bakery and I buy some chocolate chip cookies. Okay, bakery. I mean, not the store bought hard, break your teeth on them. Chocolate chip cookies. I mean, nice bakery soft chocolate chip cookies. Okay.
Mhm.
So I buy these things, and I do it all the time. I may go out and I might buy it on a Wednesday. I don't eat them until Shabbat because I save them because they're special. So I save my best for Shabbat, which we're supposed to do. We're supposed to save our best for Shabbat.
Yep.
So I get the pleasure of eating something special for Shabbat, but it's also a mitzvah because we know that eating on Shabbat is a mitzvah. It's a twofer.
Actually, it's a threefer because on Shabbat you're supposed to have 3 meals.
Well, I'll start eating the cookies like right after Shacharit and Musaf, and then just keep eating through the day because there's no calories on Shabbat.
No. That's a good subject for discussion.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Dahl says he didn't ask for 2 glasses of wine. Well, we're just using that as an example that okay, so we know he probably most people would make two burakas for kiddush, once after Kabbalat and once one in the morning. So
2 different prayers.
Yeah, so you're deriving benefit from the two glasses, and
You know why the short version of the prayer is on Shabbos on lunchtime after Musaf?
yeah,
You know
we
why it's
had
shorter?
we talked about that a couple of weeks ago, didn't we?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't recall right offhand.
People are hungry. Well, you know the prayer for Shabbos after Musaf for the prayer of wine.
Mm-hmm.
So most people they say, well, they made it shorter because everybody is ready for Kiddush. So to go and eat, especially the food that you make, the cholent.
Yeah. I mean, we do our services
The
later.
Friday night prayer is with Yom HaShishi. You're bringing in the Sabbath.
Mm-hmm.
Friday night you're bringing in the Sabbath. On Saturday, after Musaf, you say Al Kain Berach Adonai Es Yom HaShabbat by Kachehu. You're saying that this is why God blessed this day of Sabbath. So you didn't bless the Sabbath on Friday night, but you're blessing it now because it is the Sabbath. So it's two different prayers, basically with the same meaning.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean
So we
the
did it.
yeah, and after Kabbalat and Ma'ariv, and you go home to eat, and then in the Sephardic household,
Yeah.
you have the blessing before you eat, and it goes on for like 6 pages.
Yes. Also, Friday night is a ritual because before you eat and you make kiddush, you're supposed to bless your children.
Right.
It's more than because this is how you bring in the Sabbath. During the day, it's already Shabbos, so it's a whole different thing on Friday night,
Yeah.
which is nice, lighting the candles to the woman of the house, or I should say the queen of the house.
There you go.
It's a whole new ritual, which is nice, and lighting the candles
Yeah.
and saying the prayers.
Saying the Shech Ha'il for your wife.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you do the Suda David?
Yes.
Yeah.
You also to bless your wife, you're supposed to say Ashes Chayil,
Mm-hmm.
So but there are different traditions, and different people. Ashkenazis do this different. The Sephardics do it different. The Orthodox do it different. The conservatives do it different.
Yeah.
And basically they say, well, why are you making so many classes? We are all Jews, but we Jews like to make classes.
Yeah. Oh man.
Now you got even more classes. You have the egalitarian movement. I don't know what the women putting on a talus and tefillin. I think to me that's a joke. But
Well,
and I don't.
they're doing it without actually doing it by the way that the actually Torah law. I mean, we're not even talking about rabbinic law. It's Torah law. When they take on a mitzvah.
There's any ladies listening in. I don't mean any disrespect, but a woman is not supposed to put on tefillin and a talus. I've done many weddings, and I have the groom saying, "Well, I don't want to wear a talus," and I try to explain to them that a talus has no religious connotation. The small one that you wear every day, yes, but a talus. When you put on a talus in the chuppah, you're paying homage to your bride, saying, I am married because I tell a lot of young ladies when they come to shul and they see a man dressed in a suit, but he doesn't wear a talus. He's single, grab him. But if he has a talus, he's married. Leave him alone. But nowadays, instead of giving tefillin in a prayer book for the bar mitzvah boys, they give him a talus, and he shouldn't be wearing a talus. So now everybody wears the talus. So everybody's married in shul.
Yeah.
A young
Now
man
the mothers don't know who to pick.
Yeah, a young man should not, if he's not married, should not wear a talus.
That's true.
Plain and simple. But a talus you can buy a talus for $40, $50, but a set of good tefillin could be $1,000. So.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And that's
easily.
$1,000 is cheap for a set of tefillin.
Yeah.
And some people use also the Rabbeinu Tam. There's 2 sets. It's getting even more expensive.
Yeah, it can be. I mean, especially if you're, again, you're performing a mitzvah, and the idea is that you go to the expense to be able to perform to beautify the mitzvah.
Correct. But what if I can't afford it?
Well, I mean, if you can't afford it, there are other options. I mean, you can
Correct. There's a lot of people
glazot, the perushim, or
there's
whatever.
There's a lot of synagogues who have a Rabbeinu Tam, and you just go to the rabbi and say, "Can I put them on?" And you put them on, and you just put them back. So, there's always an answer.
So, who is Rabbeinu Tam? So we have Rashi tefillin, we have Rabbeinu Tam tefillin.
Yeah.
So
was Rabbeinu Tam Sephardic or Ashkenazi?
What was Rashi?
Rashi?
Yeah.
Rashi was Ashkenazi.
So Rabbeinu Tam was Ashkenazi because Rabbeinu Tam was Rashi's son-in-law.
Correct.
Yeah.
Which
is really, I find it really odd. I mean, you have one of the greatest commentators of the Torah and the Gemara and the Psalms and all of that, and you have his son-in-law who studied with him, with one of the Tosafot,
yeah.
And he says, no, Rashi's wrong. I mean, is that just a son-in-law being a son-in-law?
Well, it's the same case we had just this evening. The son-in-law goes to his father-in-law to eat, and the father-in-law makes him to pay. So
yeah. Yeah, I found that a little odd. I mean, I've heard the story of Avraham doing that to strangers.
Yep.
To get to kind of force them to make a bracha.
There is not much discussions or anything on our background on the Rabbeinu Tam, because he does not appear, in too many places.
Yeah.
But he very avidly disagreed. So that's why he invented or said, "I'm going to make another set of tefillin, my tefillin." But the only people really that follow
the difference between the two is basically the order that the scrolls inside are.
Correct. The only people that follow and use the Rabbeinu Tam tefillin are Chabad. Nobody else.
Now, at what point do you switch from Rashi to Rabbeinu Tam?
Well, at the end of the service, you do not take off the tefillin on your head. The Rabbeinu Tam is only on your hand. So you put it on your hand. You do the bracha to put on the tefillin. You do Baruch She'omar. You do Shemona Esrei, and do the Kaddish. That's it. You don't do the full service.
Right.
How they came up with it, I haven't got a clue.
I don't know. I wear Rashi, and that's all I wear. So, And that's
Tell me
because
something. If you only wore Rabbeinu Tam, if you only wore Rabbeinu Tam and you said the whole morning prayer, does it make it wrong? I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
So, whoever ruled that these are the only 4 or 5 prayers you're supposed to say, since you already done a full prayer, a full service, I don't know, but who am I to judge?
Well, I wear strictly Rashi because my father's a direct descendant of Rashi.
Mm-hmm.
So we wear Rashi. Let's see. Donald says, given our political situation, people might have to charge for the meal they invite others to eat. Should I expect a date to pay for a meal? Yeah, I've seen several things about that. Guy takes a woman out on a date, finds out that she's she's one of these headstrong feminists, and so she says, okay, well, you pay for your own meal. You're a liberated woman, pay for your own meal.
Does it make it right or does it make it wrong? Who knows? I mean, as 2 people go out, there should be an understanding between the 2 people. I've seen people say, we're going out, but let's split the meal. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's also understood that if you ask a person to go on a date, it should be your responsibility to pay for the meal.
That's true. If you invite somebody, you should. I'll make a note for myself to remind me that next week we'll do the Lost to Fill-In.
Okay.
Which, again, was a really interesting one. So, okay. Now I'll remember.
All right.
And as soon as we get off the air, I'll probably just...
I think we had enough of it.
Yeah, we got a little bit of time, but I think we can call it early.
So, any more opinions from the crowd?
No, that's well, let's see. Marshall says a liberated woman pays for both. I like that. Okay, so.
Can I invite Marshall for lunch? Since I'm a liberated rabbi.
Okay. So, I think we're going to go ahead and we're going to call it early tonight.
Okay.
And I'm going to turn your volume down here, and I'll be back as soon as we sign off here.
Okay.
So I want to thank everybody for being here this evening. Let's make sure we got everybody in the chat room. Let's see if anybody snuck in while I wasn't looking. Shoshi joined us somewhere along the line here, and I didn't see her come in. But anyway, thanks for being here tonight. Again, if you're enjoying the shows, there's a thumbs up button down there. You can hit that thumbs up button and help us out there. And then don't forget, tomorrow night is the Torah study in depth with yours truly. We're still working on the Sefer Shemot. And Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern is Kabbalat and Ma'ariv, the Shabbat service. And on Shabbat morning at 10 a.m. is Shachrit and Musaf. And we have Rosh Chodesh, and we have the 6th day of Hanukkah, and lots of Torah readings and stuff like that. So, and then right back here again on Monday, which will be the last day of Hanukkah. Well, actually, by the time we're on, Hanukkah will be over. But we'll be back with Zeta's Story Corner. I hope you enjoyed his song last night, and then again, right back here on Tuesday for our the Rabbis Discuss, and we'll be discussing the thing about the left to fill in. So, until then, everyone, we will simply say, I light of the Tov.